Hi, I'm Allison Yeager, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the shocking story of John F. Kennedy's death. Crowds of exhilarated people gathered and waved to the Kennedys as they drove through Dealey Plaza in an open-top convertible. As the vehicle passed by a local book depository, shots rang out into the crowd. John F. Kennedy was fatally shot in the neck and head. The governor of Texas, who was also present in the vehicle, was non-fatally shot in the back. The president was immediately rushed to Parkland Hospital, but unfortunately little could be done for him. A Catholic priest was summoned to administer the last rites, and at 1 p.m., John F. Kennedy was pronounced dead. John F. Kennedy's death was a shock to the world and is a major historical event that all Americans should be informed about because of its cultural and political significance. I chose to speak on this topic because I'm really passionate and interested in crime and history, and this topic contains both. I will discuss the events leading up to the assassination itself, and who was responsible for the crime. First, we will look at the events that led up to John F. Kennedy's assassination. At the time, Kennedy was campaigning in Texas, which is why he was there to begin with. Kennedy wanted to raise funds for his upcoming run, and he wanted to begin his quest for re-election. There was some discourse between some Texas Democratic Party members, and he really wanted to make sure that those were resolved before the election came about, just to guarantee his vote from Texas, because he had barely won over Texas in his initial election. So he really wanted to lock in the possibility of getting that vote from Texas. People had many different opinions on Kennedy, good and bad, but there was no real warning signs of what was to come. So far we have discussed the events leading up to the president's assassination, so next let's look at the tragedy itself. What was it like that day in Dallas, Texas? It was November 22nd, 1963, and many people were gathered in Dealey Plaza to watch the Kennedys pass by. JFK was accompanied by his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, and the governor of Texas, John Connally, and his wife. They were en route for what was supposed to be a 10-mile motorcade through downtown Dallas, the original plan before tragedy struck. Let's move on to the details of the assassination itself. As the famed Lincoln convertible passed by this Texas school book depository, shots rang out from a 6th-floor window. JFK was fatally shot in the neck and head, leaving part of his head missing. His body tensed up and he slumped over onto Mrs. Kennedy directly after he was shot. Terrified, she unsuccessfully attempted to crawl to the back of the motorcade in a panicked frenzy, and she was in total shock from the incident. It was an extremely brutal scene for horrified onlookers in Dealey Plaza that day. John Connally, the governor of Texas, was also injured from a bullet wound to the back, and James Tagg, a witness to the assassination, received a minor wound to his right cheek. Kennedy was immediately rushed to nearby Parkland Memorial Hospital, and he was pronounced dead there at 1 p.m. Let's watch a video of when the story first broke and the first newscast aired.
President Kennedy is reported to be fighting for his life in a Dallas hospital, but reports conflict. CBS says he is dead. Here is a picture of the president. You've seen the picture of the president just before he was shot in the limousine in Dallas, Texas. Mr. Kennedy was struck in the head. The governor of Texas, John Connally, was shot in the back.
When such a huge event occurs, there are obviously going to be some impacts and residuals. Let's go through some of the things that occurred after Kennedy's death. Lyndon B. Johnson, who was vice president to Kennedy at the time of his death, was sworn in as 36th president of the United States. Americans were in fear and grief-stricken after Kennedy's assassination because some people feared that this was the start of a bigger attack on the U.S. According to Deneen L. Brown of the Washington Post, people cried openly in the streets. Teachers interrupted classes with the somber news. Children walked home from school that afternoon to find their mothers weeping and their fathers arriving home from work visibly shaken. Families piled into living rooms to watch television, glued to the news out of Dallas. Americans would forever remember where they were when they heard the news of the death of John F. Kennedy. We just looked at what occurred the day of the tragedy, so now let's look at who's responsible for the tragedy. The man responsible for killing JFK is Lee Harvey Oswald. He was an American Marxist and former U.S. Marine. Oswald had communist ideals and a general disdain towards authority. He had a very odd life in which he moved to the Soviet Union and attempted to become a citizen there, but he was unsuccessful. Oswald had gotten a job at the Texas School Book Depository, which had given him access to the building from which Kennedy was shot. Approximately 45 minutes after JFK's killing, Oswald killed a police officer who questioned him after the shooting. He was caught and apprehended by police in a nearby movie theater. 2 days later, while being taken into county jail, he was shot and killed by a man named Jack Ruby. So who was Jack Ruby and why did he do it? He was a local strip joint and nightclub owner. There was evidence indicating that Jack Ruby had been involved in illegal gambling, narcotics, and prostitution. He had relationships with Dallas policemen, even though he was thought to be a criminal in the local area, which made him seem kind of shady and suspicious to the people around him. He claims he acted out of rage over the death of the president, and also that he killed Oswald in order to spare Jacqueline Kennedy from having to testify in Oswald's trial. He was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to death, though he later died in 1967 from cancer in Parkland Hospital, the same hospital that JFK died in. Though Lee Harvey Oswald is largely blamed for Kennedy's death, many people believe that other parties were involved in some way or that some type of foul play took place that day. A study conducted by Gallup polls in 2013 states that 61% of Americans believe that there were others besides Oswald involved. It was believed that the Mafia, federal government, or CIA was involved, or that there were multiple shooters somehow. Various groups believe that Jack Ruby was associated with major figures in organized crime, and that played into it somehow. The Warren Commission report concluded that there were no larger conspiracies. Release records show no evidence of any foul play, and 30,000 never-before-seen or unredacted documents were released to the public in the National Archives in 2017 and 2018, with another set to release in October of 2021. Now let's review what we have learned about the shocking assassination of JFK today. John F. Kennedy's death was a shock to the world, and it is a major historical event that all Americans should know about due to its significance culturally and politically. Overall, we reviewed what led up to the assassination of the 35th President of the United States, what happened on the day of the assassination, and who killed John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The impact and shock of Kennedy's assassination has and will continue to be felt by Americans for generations to come. Thank you.